Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. Joining me, as always, on Tuesday morning is Edwin Eisendrath, the host of It's the Democracy Stupid, right here on Lincoln Square on Fridays. He's a former Chicago alderman, former CEO of the Chicago Sun-Times, and he currently hosts a show on Heartland Signal in Chicago. Edwin, thanks so much for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Well, I guess we should probably start with Trump posting that AI image of him as Jesus, which he did take down, which is fairly unusual for him. But we have his explanation about how it was all the fake news creating a problem, and that's not what he meant.
Mr. President, did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and it had to do with Red Cross, as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better.
Edwin, what are your thoughts?
Can you put that image back up for 1 second while we talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My doctor doesn't look like that. And neither a doctor nor any image of Jesus has U.S. warplanes flying in the sky above his left shoulder. That's not how you make people healthy. That's not the preachings in the gospel. And I don't know what that monster is over his head. Whatever it is, it's utterly bizarre. And what is in his left hand, that glowing orb? Like, what what doctor has he been to that has that, right? The man is an absolute liar, but he's also insane. And maybe there's a form of, it's not a psychiatric term, or hasn't been in a couple hundred years, but maybe there's a form of moral insanity. And if there is, that's what's in this picture.
Yeah. And this is just pretty much the textbook definition of blasphemy. And you would think that a lot of his very religious, conservative Christian supporters would take issue with this. But there does not seem to be a line that Trump can cross. Let's not forget, after Pope Francis died, he posted another AI image of him as the Pope. So he's no stranger to doing these kinds of gimmicks. And this was kind of part of when he posted the Jesus image. That was one of about a dozen middle of the night posts, one more bizarre than the next. He really does seem to be he seems to be going through something, Edwin. He's picking fights with the Pope now, saying that the Pope is soft on crime. And it occurred to me that, is this some sort of a reference to the fact that he's from Chicago? Because we all know how much Donald Trump likes picking on Chicago and saying that crime is a huge issue there.
Yeah. Look, it's a requirement of fascists to destroy our sense of order, our sense of propriety, our sense of that there are more than one source of wisdom and truth in the world, right? So all of these things that he does are so subversive. They're intended to change. He'll back off if he's caught. Oh, I was just a doctor. Oh, I didn't mean it. But what he's really trying to do is erode any sense we have of a world where he isn't in charge of everything. Just erode it. And it's phenomenally dangerous at the highest levels of American culture, of the world's culture, when you do this. And it's of a piece with fascist behavior that we've seen throughout time. But the truth is, we don't buy it, and so he attacks a popular pope. He attacks a pope who knows how to fight back. And I'll take that as the Chicago part, not the crime part. We know how to fight back. He takes on a pope who can fight back, and fight back by rising above in a way that people respect. Um, so all of this has served him well over time, right? If he can be the one who disrupts absolutely everything, then people pay attention to, well, he's the man in the middle. He's the guy we got to follow. And it's worked for him, but it's no longer working for him because this radical destruction of everything of value. And I mean, a value, no matter how you measure it, economic value, moral value, artistic value. I was in DC this weekend and I looked at the Kennedy Center and thought, oh my gosh, like it's closed for 2 years. And all those artists who are going to perform there, all that music, all that dance, all that theater, guess that much of it can't be replaced, right? He's just destructive of everything in every dimension, our economy, our environment, our moral fabric, our sense that we are one country, our ability to have a nation of laws, destructive. And he wants to be the only one standing who can put it together back in his image where he and his family can make money off of all of it. But we're not putting up with it. We actually think that thing he posted on Easter about destroying a culture, a whole culture, was repulsive, and the whole world thought it was repulsive. And then he followed up by posting himself as Jesus on also still in this holiday. Everybody thought that was insane, right? I mean, and we listened to him trying to describe a war. This week, yesterday he said we were imposing a blockade, and ships are going in and out past whatever this blockade is. His word is meaningless. Absolutely meaningless in every sense. So while he tried to destroy our sense of meaning of everything important, what he destroyed was his own. And he now means nothing to America. As I said before, we are done with him. I wish he were done with us, but we're going to get there.
Edwin, you make such a good point that this is really a tactic that's tried and true with dictators, where they center themselves in the culture. And an image like putting himself as Jesus, I mean, that's really ritual humiliation of his most religious supporters, where they have to subjugate their faith and everything that they hold dear to defend what dear leader is doing. And that's a really disturbing place for us to be in as a country. But to your point, that's a shrinking minority of Americans who fall into that category. Even so many of the people who voted for him in 2024 are done with Trump. You look at the numbers on this war with Iran, which seems to be what really got Trump all worked up, because the Pope, being a religious figure, being someone who would obviously advocate for peace, had the nerve to say, no, I don't think that a conflict like this is a just one. I think that, perhaps he didn't even say the words, but we can all say threatening to nuke Iran, threatening to bomb them back into the Stone Age. That's not a moral statement. That's not something that we want from our leaders. And all you have to do is look at the polling here in the US. These are devastating numbers on the war, and they are dragging Trump down.
Good. Now let me go back to this notion that his supporters who have faith have to somehow justify that image of him. It goes back to the big lie. If you can get people to tell lies for you, they know they're lies, but they're going to tell them anyway for you, then they've crossed a line for you that is hard to push back, because right then they have to admit it. So the big lie was one of them. And could he get people to parrot this thing that is patently untrue, that is proven untrue ever? And if they're willing to parrot that lie, then it's very hard for them to walk back, because now they've put themselves at stake, right? So and now he's gone bigger than American democracy. Are you willing to put all of your faith and call it a lie for me? Mm-hmm. All of it. And some number of people still will, but it's a declining number. And if they do it, they will die for him. No question.
Yeah.
And those of us who will build a democracy on their ashes will mourn their passing.
Well, let's talk about where we are at with the war with Iran. While Trump was at a UFC fight, talks with his esteemed...
Wait, just stop.
Yes.
Stop. Can you believe that? He and his Secretary of State went to a UFC fight while the most consequential negotiations of his presidency were going on halfway around the world, and he was too busy watching people punch each other and having a grand old time with, I might add, the Secretary of State, whose job it is, and he's also national security advisor, right? Because
and the head of Venezuela as well.
Oh yes, and the head of Venezuela, right? They're all paying no attention. But
Right.
so that tells me, Susan, that they sent J.D. Vance out there not to be successful.
Right.
Right? They sent him the same way they sent Pence to a football game when he was vice president, and they did it twice, and to a Hamilton concert when he was a vice president, so that he could leave in the middle and just and make a statement. So Vance went. He spent 21 hours there, and then he left to make a statement. Oh, they weren't ready.
Right. He was also there with Jared Kushner, who has significant financial interests in the region and is in business with MBS, who has been one of the forces trying to egg Trump on in this conflict, along with Netanyahu. Right now, where are we at with all this, Edwin? I mean, it seems like we are no closer to peace. The Iranians are now facing a potential U.S.-led blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think that we're going to see an escalation this week?
The entire world is desperate for this to be over. We do not have an alternative to what comes through those waterways, and that's true for energy for the planet. It's true for oil and gas. It's what we use. We may not like it, but it's what we use. But it's also true for fertilizer. And we are about to be in planting season, and potentially 1 million lives depend on our being able to get those fertilizers to the fields where they need to be. But it's principally in Asia, but Americans don't want to be responsible for millions of deaths around the world. And Europe and Asia are all determined that this should end, and they're furious at the United States for closing the straits. Not furious at Iran for those straits were open before we did this.
Right.
So Russia and China are working together now to strengthen Iran. Right. This puts America in a tier, and our allies in NATO are saying, this is your mess. Don't drag us into it. I mean, when there's peace, they will help police the strait to make sure it stays peaceful, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't want to get in this war that we caused. And I mean, this is the biggest geopolitical fuck up that I can remember. And it's a disaster for the whole world. And it is going to be a forever stain on the United States that is going to hurt our relations. And NATO, I heard a NATO, one of the secretaries from NATO, not the boss, but one of the underlings there say, you know what, NATO's stronger than ever. We like the United States to be a big part of it, but we've stepped up. We're going to do what we need to do to protect Europe, at least, and we'll do it. So again, there we go. Donald Trump said, you'll die without us, and they said, good riddance.
Well, I mean, let's go back to the beginning of this conflict. Nobody in the administration could give us a consistent reason for why they were going into Iran in the first place. And so now, as Trump does want to disentangle us from this, what are the objectives to get out? Besides him tweeting that I've won and, all glorious victory is because of me, what is it that we need to get out of this for peace? Because right now, by the looks of it, you have Iran that has closed the strait effectively. which was not the case before the conflict. They have sanctions that we had slapped on them that were lifted because Donald Trump is terrified of oil prices going even higher. The Russians have come out very well because sanctions against them for energy have been lifted. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of winners here, but we are not among them.
Who has Donald Trump not yet betrayed? Let's see. He betrayed the American people. He gave a State of the Union message while he was planning on going to war and didn't bother to tell us. We don't count. We don't matter. Cannon fodder. He betrayed the soldiers that have already died. Many of them in what we now know was completely unprotected position. He betrayed our allies in Europe and Asia by closing the strait that they need for their energy, driving up costs for them everywhere without so much as a heads up. This is what we're doing and why.
Mm-hmm.
He betrayed the Iranian people who were, at his request earlier, in the streets saying we want a different government, and they now have the same government, only stronger, right?
And many of them have died.
And many were murdered. And it looks as if he is betraying his good pal, Bibi Netanyahu, too, by cutting and running as he must, because he can't invade and conquer Iran while they still have their nuclear material. So, so there is no one the man won't betray. And he is, I mean, really in the whole world, he's betrayed almost everybody.
Yes. And as this is going on, Trump approaches the presidency with the seriousness that he always has by going to a UFC fight and posting AI photos of him as Jesus. That's really what we deserve as Americans for our leader. Yeah.
And by the way, I mentioned that he betrayed Bibi. That doesn't mean, because every time in that part of the world, you think, well, if you're betraying Bibi, then you have to be for Palestine. If you're for Palestine, you have to be against Israel. That's not Donald Trump. He certainly betrayed everyone in Gaza who he said he was going to by now would be a paradise, right? So he's betrayed everybody.
Yes.
And he is an unserious dumbass who has caused, by luck and maybe by instinct, but never by careful thought has he done anything good for us.
Yes. But Donald Trump and his family have profited handsomely off of a lot of these international deals. Certainly many people who seem to have insider information have been trading on things that have been happening with the Iran war, and they've gotten rich on markets like Polymarket and Kalshi. And, you have Pete Hegseth, who there was very good reporting that he reportedly told his broker to make deals before the Iran war. And he's our Secretary of Defense. So there certainly are people who are benefiting here. They're all named Trump or friends of his. But meanwhile, the Iranian people are still suffering. Here back at home, gas prices have risen. Food prices are probably going to rise as well because of fertilizer prices.
Yep.
The International Monetary Fund said today that they're projecting slower growth and higher inflation worldwide because of this conflict. It has reverberations throughout the entire world. But let's talk a little bit about a regime that was also very, very corrupt, another personalist regime, and that's the one in Hungary. And that came crumbling down over the weekend, which is very good news for everyone in the world.
Yeah, I mean, if this weren't such a tight shot, I might get up and dance around. I was so thrilled with that. I mean, the Hungarian regime was terrible for Hungary, for sure. It was a great betrayal of those people by a very charismatic young man who grew to be a corrupt old one, Viktor Orban. But he was more than a corrupt leader of Hungary. He was the spiritual leader of CPAC in the United States, of the modern Republican Party, of Project 2025, which are all his strategies. They all went there and studied, how can we create a country where a handful of people make themselves a fortune and make everybody else their slave?
Right.
And they love that idea. And they
Yes.
said it can be, look, we can con people by making it race-based, by telling them they have to hate people who aren't like them. We can make them forget their own interests because they're so afraid of everybody else until they don't know it, and we put the chains around them. And every element of a fair democracy collapsed there except the last one, which was they still held elections, right? The press was corrupt. The system of law was, there were two tiers, one for everybody else and one for him and his friends, so they could get away with everything. All the contracts went to insiders. It was it impoverished the country. Hungary has had the sort of been lagging in all of the indicators amongst EU members. And meanwhile, of course, he was doing Putin's bidding, vetoing EU help for Ukraine. In every way, he was Putin's stooge, which meant, of course, that he was somebody that Trump would love, right? And CPAC would follow because these fascists hang together. And because it's a world they want, and it's not the world we want. But the Hungarian people, thank God, took this last chance they had, which was the vote, and they made it so overwhelming that you couldn't call it a fraud. You couldn't pretend it didn't happen. The only thing you could do at that point was bring in tanks and roll over everybody in the country, and that they decided not to do. They live to fight another day. Now, there's a huge task the new administration has, right? Because they have to rewrite all the laws that favored a few and disfavored democracy in Hungary. So they have a lot of work to restore the rule of law, to restore fair election, really fair elections, to restore, I'm talking about gerrymandering. They certainly did theirs. In every way, they have a heavy lift, as we will when we overcome our own version of the same. But this repudiation. I mean, remember when Donald Trump ran for office, Susan, he said, I don't know Project 2025. I've never heard of it. What is it? I haven't read it. I don't know anything about it, right? And yet his administration hired all those people trained by Project 2025 in the Hungarian method and began to impose it upon Americans from day one, from those day one executive orders, and they have never stopped. They have never stopped. And just like in Hungary, the elites fell in line. Right? Oh, we could lose something. So the corporate guys hand them their cash. They brought them their gold. They bowed down. The big law firms, the big corporations, many of the big universities, they were afraid and they bowed down. But the American people, like the Hungarian people, never did and aren't going to. And we have elections too. And Donald Trump can try, as he's trying to cheat. He's trying to centralize them. He's trying to take them away. He's claiming they're false. He's claiming we can't believe them. And the Supreme Court has helped him in that. But we believe in them still. We're going to turn out and vote. By the way, we have a vote. You and I haven't talked about this. Virginia's voting next week.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's going to be interesting. That's close.
And that's the referendum on redistricting that would allow the Democratic trifecta to redraw the maps to counter what Republicans have done in states like Texas, following the model of California, which successfully passed Prop 50 last year. And actually, I will say I have Michael O'Connor from the Dogwood Courier Newsroom's publication. He'll be on with me on First Draft tomorrow to walk through all of it. So good. Looking forward to that conversation. Yeah. But Edwin, it gives me so much hope with what happened in Hungary because they were under Orban's rule for 16 long years. And, here we've had to contend with Donald Trump, dominating politics for 11 years at this point. He luckily has not been in power the entire time, but there is hope, even when you're in a personalist regime, even when you are subject to an authoritarian regime, that you still can break out of it. And that's hope that we can draw from. That's the hope that you and I feel when we go to the No Kings protests. People who aren't willing to give up and give up what America really is, just like people in Hungary weren't willing to give up their country, and they were willing to fight back, even against what looked like insurmountable odds. So I take a lot of hope from that. And I certainly hope that Donald Trump was, crying himself to sleep. And it was another humiliation for J.D. Vance, who went there and openly campaigned for Orban. And I don't know if we can say that he has the kiss of death, but certainly he's not a help.
Oh, J.D. Vance?
Yes.
Oh, not anywhere. Not anywhere. I wonder if he went there and said, hey, there's a town here in Hungary where they're eating their cats. They're eating their neighbors' cats, right? Like the kinds of stuff he says here, right? Yeah, just revolting. But look, a democracy is a set of rules and regulations that have been perfected, that continue to be perfected over time, but it's based on something very real. In countries where there's never been democracy, throughout the history of China, before there was even a thought of Western democracy in that part of the world, they had this notion of mandate of heaven. And the emperor could lose the mandate of heaven, and then that dynasty fell.
Mm-hmm.
But what that was the people saying, we've had it. We've absolutely had it. Now we have far more tools than anybody had who ended any of those dynasties to put these leaders out to pasture, right? Because there isn't anything as powerful as humanity when we combine.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it, as you say, at those rallies. But it is just this rediscovery that we actually are connected to each other, that we aren't all alone, that we aren't just the boss and us, that in fact there is, a union, and it's complicated, and we are different, but we are connected. And when we recognize that we are connected, then these guys cannot get away with this.
Right.
And so we build a democracy around the rules that govern how we effectuate that connectedness and build a country together. And that's what they've been undermining, but they can't undermine our humanity. They can make us admit their lies. That certainly undermines everybody's humanity, but most people haven't done it. And some of the ones who have come to regret it.
Yes. And what happened with the election in Hungary has incredible implications for the world order, because, as you pointed out, they have been Putin's friend in NATO. They have vetoed crucial resolutions that would have helped the Ukrainian people, who have been under just complete onslaught from Russia for 4 years now. And so without having Orban there as, to do Putin's bidding, that could really change the dynamics in that war. And the Ukrainian people have been fighting for democracy. They've been fighting for freedom for years. So I'm sure this comes as extremely welcome news for them.
I mean, it's wishful thinking, maybe a little, but if you look ahead and you see the end of the MAGA rule in America, you see Americans save their democracy from the most serious threat it's ever faced. You see Hungarians overturn their dictator. You see Europe, maybe even with American help, pushing back to rescue Ukraine, to put an end to the slaughter there and save that country. Then for the first time, in a while, the autocrats in the world are really on the back foot. Then we can see something inspiring. I mean, the youngest continent on the planet and soon to be the most populous is Africa. And, they haven't made up their mind yet whether they're going to be autocratic or democratic. They're vying back and forth on that continent. But if at this moment in history, we save the oldest democracy in the world, we crush tyranny in Europe, right? And push Putin back to his to the Kremlin, where he belongs, and came out of these other countries, then there's a different move afoot on the planet. There's one that's more hopeful again, one where people matter again. And then we can start to deal with, the uh, um, a different kind of order, not one where the fanciest people jet off to their islands while other people live on islands that are now flooded and they don't know where they're going to go. Right? We can build a world for everybody, and we are. You know what? We can. That's not crazy wishful thinking. We have the greatest technology imaginable. We are a smart species. We don't have to like do everything just for 1% of us.
Right. But part of that is we really do need to have some accountability, not just for everyone in the Trump administration, but for the people who have really profited off of evil, like building concentration camps for ICE, Palantir, and all of the tech overlords who willingly talk about how they want to socially re-engineer everything and essentially eliminate jobs, and the way they talk. I mean, really, it's almost explicitly talking about slavery. And these are people who need to be held to account because they have way too much money, way too much power. Their influence is global. And if we're really going to rebuild, the world order and have democracy become ascendant again, that has to be a big piece of this because they have some very, very bad allies in the world when it comes to Putin and Xi and Trump.
Yeah, I mean, this technology that I talked about that could be hopeful can be used to perfect tyranny. This mass surveillance state stuff that they talk about is very dangerous, and we have to be wise about how we push back. And accountability has been the lack of accountability has been one of the things that's undermined people's faith in democracy. And it goes way back. It goes back to no one was held accountable for all those lost homes in 2008. Right?
Yes.
No, we didn't do it. And all of those, the Epstein world where no one was held accountable for all of those crimes and those the abuse of the young women, but the financial crimes too.
Right.
No one was held accountable. And a lot of people were participated, including some very big banks participated.
Deutsche Bank, for instance, yes.
Mm-hmm. So we have to demonstrate that the rule of law applies to everyone, not just to those who aren't able to hire enormous law firms.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I was really pleased to see this week is that there has been some accountability for Congressman Eric Swalwell, who was facing some pretty serious allegations of sexual assault. He was running for California governor in a very crowded field. And there were a number of Democrats, I think pretty much all of his congressional endorsements vaporized. He was condemned by many party leaders, asked to drop out, and he did within short order and is leaving Congress as well. It's good to see that there is some accountability in the party for that, because as we've seen, there's been zero accountability when it comes to Trump for Republicans. I mean, he threatened to nuke Iran last week, and Republicans still would not entertain the 25th Amendment or impeachment. And I have to say, there also was some accountability from Republicans in Congress too. Not Trump, but at least some within the party, because Tony Gonzalez, who's a Republican congressman from Texas, also was facing sexual misconduct allegations. He's now leaving Congress. We need more of this because it's true. A lot of people have lost their faith in our leaders. They don't see accountability at the top. So this is a good place to start. But, this accountability needs to apply to those at the absolute top in the Trump administration sooner than later.
Who would be left in the administration to run the government, Susan, if we held them all accountable?
And is the government running all that well right now?
No, it's certainly not. It's certainly not. I mean, it's a band of crooks that will ultimately face some kind of accountability. I don't know how America does it. He'll pardon everybody, so it won't be criminal in that way. But we will definitely have some commission, right, that makes their crimes
Yeah.
known for sure, and then we'll figure out what we do about it. And that's from the Don Juniors of the world, who are now major defense contractors and on the board of Polymarket or senior advisors to Polymarket and the other markets that are profiting and letting people profit off his father's decisions leaked to their friends. All of this stuff has to happen. Jared's unconscionable representation of the United States while he's in the pay of other nations. This is has been un-American, not allowed. Something that both parties have drawn lines about through most of our history. But Donald Trump's obliterated those lines, as we said earlier. He's been the most transgressive man who's ever been in the White House, and that has damaged the I don't even know what to call it, really, the scaffolding that we need in order to build our government on and our trust in each other. And he's just taken a chainsaw to it. What a terrible guy.
Well, we clearly need to have some sort of an overhaul on our ethics laws and how our government functions, because when you have reports that Donald Trump has already told people in his administration, don't worry about anything you do, I'm just going to pardon you. And that level of mass corruption, we cannot function even long after Donald Trump is gone if that sort of mass corruption is a viable loophole in this country. It just doesn't work.
I don't stand with those sensible Democrats who say, oh, we should not impeach and remove this man from office. We should keep our heads down and let him continue to be self-destructive. He's destroying everything he touches every day he's there. And the sooner he's out of office, the better the world will be. We would do the world a grand favor if we had the power to do it, to impeach him and throw him out on day one when we get there.
Right. I mean, he was impeached twice in his first term.
Yeah, and the Republicans saved him.
Yes. But if you look at what he's done this second term, can you credibly make the argument that nothing he's done has risen to the level of impeachment this time around? We could probably be here for a couple more hours just talking about all the things that could qualify.
Well, among them are ones that only Congress has the power to do anything about. He has taken the power of the purse and the power to go to war from Congress.
Right.
Now, you and I do not have standing to go to court and do anything about that. And no court will touch it because they think that is an interbranch problem that Congress can solve if it wants to. Mm-hmm. Suing isn't the answer. Congress has the power to say, right, and if they don't use that power, then they are not doing the jobs we sent them there for, because we sent them to do what the Constitution says they're supposed to do, like make the decisions about the money, arguing amongst each other so that we get something that most Americans agree on, as opposed to what the dictator tells you, right? And decide whether it's in the national interest to go to war or not, right? And they have that power, and they had better. I mean, you can impeach Donald Trump over those two things. He took it from them, and he didn't have the right to. And they're the only ones who can do that. So I wouldn't argue just that they have the right to impeach him and he's committed crimes. They have an obligation to throw him out.
Yes.
And they're the only ones who can do it. And they have that obligation. And every day they fail, they are creating a national disaster, a moral disaster, and an international tragedy.
Yes. And I believe the list of Democrats who have signed on to impeachment is around 50 members of Congress. And that is a list that needs to grow. And it should be a bipartisan one. But,
bipartisan.
We know the hold that Donald Trump has over the party. But at the very least, this is a moral stand for anyone to take. And I agree.
And you and I should say to those critics who are out there and they're on our side, oh no, please don't go down this road. All it does is make people think he's, being picked on. We need to focus on affordability. I'm sorry, we can do both.
Yes.
We can have affordability and accountability.
Yeah.
And in fact, as long as he's there, you'll never have affordability. So
Right. And it's a matter of having a little faith in the American people that they can chew gum and walk at the same time. I think that if you look at the polling, Americans understand very well that they don't like the wanton corruption of Trump. They don't like his war. They don't like his economy. They don't like a lot of what he's doing. The idea of signing on to impeachment and also wanting a better economy, that's not a contradiction. That's literally what the American people probably want.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So let's go get it for him.
Absolutely. Edwin, thank you as always for joining us on Tuesday, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on Friday afternoon for your show. It's The Democracy Stupid.
And this week I have Aaron Parnas. So this is me making a generational leap. Aaron is a very, very talented guy who has connected a whole generation of people to the news.
Yeah.
It's great. Really great.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. He is extremely busy. I don't know how many videos he posts a day, but with this news cycle, he could obviously do it 24/7. So that should be a good conversation.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.